Readers, our quick write today, we're starting with our work for chapters 33 to 41. Our quick write to get us in the mind of thinking about our story and getting working. Describe what you think it would be like to be an elephant. Then describe what you think it would be like to be an elephant that performs in a circus. So, scholars, I'm looking at my packet at my quick write. Right, so you're going to be writing two sentences, right? First, a sentence about what it would be like to be an elephant. I think it would be fun. Now, maybe you don't think it would be fun, right? Maybe you're writing something else. That's absolutely okay. I'm just showing you how I'm going to start mine, right? And then I would continue my answer. And then describe what it would be like to be an elephant in the circus. If I was in the circus, I would be sad because... Now, maybe that's not what you're thinking. That's absolutely okay. I'm just giving you an example for myself of what I could write based on what I'm thinking and feeling. You could be saying and thinking and feeling something completely different than that. That's okay. But what you want to make sure you're doing, scholars, is that you're answering both parts of that. So I'm going to recommend you make a pause right now and write your quick write. Remember, it's just two quick, right? The idea is that it's a quick write. So you're quickly writing just two things about that, right? Answering each question. Then we'll continue. Pause for a moment and do that. All right, scholars, now that you've done that, we're looking at cause and effect for a moment. I think actually we're going to come back to cause and effect. Let me jump ahead. Whoops. Now I went too far ahead. To the vocabulary words. Let's spend a couple minutes with that first. So our four vocabulary words today are coax. If someone tries to coax you into doing something, they try to persuade you or convince you, right? So trying to coax you. Maybe you have to go to a meeting and you just don't want to go, and your family says, well, if you come to this meeting with us, we'll stop for ice cream afterwards, right? They're trying to coax you, persuade you, convince you to go along. Our second word is entwined. Something that's entwined is weaved or interwoven. And you might have noticed when we were reading that Ruby's trunk and Stella's trunk were entwined, that they weaved their trunks together, right? They were hooked together. Indifferent. If you act indifferent, you act uninterested. Or you are maybe uninterested. So indifferent. If you act indifferently towards something, you're not interested in it. You're like, I don't care. Right? And when Ivan was acting indifferent, he wasn't actually indifferent. He was actually very interested in what Julia was doing with the new elephant. And then nimbly. Nimbly means quickly. And, oops, I need to fix that little error there. Quickly and with grace and skill. Right? So if you've ever heard the little poem, Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick, right? The idea is that you can do something quickly and you do it gracefully with skill. If you've ever seen someone running and they jump over hurdles, right? Someone who does that can do it in a very nimble way. They can be quick and very graceful and skilled about it. Nimbly. think about how nimbly was used in our story today. So scholars, let's take a quick look at that vocabulary section. So the reason I want to look at it with you today, it's a different instruction. Write the vocabulary word next to its synonym. So synonyms have a similar meaning. So you're thinking about a word that means the same. So interwoven, right? So think woven. What word did we talk about and do we see in our list here that has to do with something being woven together? So weaved, right? Entwined. So entwined. And then I'm going to jump down to the last one, expertly. If something does something expertly, which of those words do you think has to do with being an expert at something? Right? Skilled at it, graceful at it. So expertly and nimbly are synonyms. And that, of course, leaves the other two for you, scholars. And you can pause and do those two right now quickly, or you can come back to that a little bit later in our lesson. So, sorry everyone, I'm a little frozen up here. There we go. Then remember, I jumped past this little section, so I want to talk to you about that. So cause and effect. This is a little bit tricky, and it's going to take some good focus and work for us, but it comes up quite often now in our reading work. So, cause and effect. The effect is what happened. The cause is why it happened. So, the effect, again, is what happened. And the cause is why it happened. So, an example of that, the cause, right? So, you didn't do your homework. So, what happens because of that? You had to stay in at recess, right? So, let's try this one. So the cause, you didn't tie your shoelaces. So scholars, think for a moment. What could happen, right? So what could happen because you didn't tie your shoelaces? Think for a moment. What did you say? Did you say you fell down? You tripped? Your shoe came off? All kinds of things that could happen because you didn't tie your shoelaces. How about this one? We're switching gears now. This one has the effect. So the what is already here. You are really hungry at 10 a.m. Now think, what's the cause? Why might you really be hungry at 10 a.m.? Think for a moment. Did you say you didn't eat breakfast? Right? Could you be really hungry at 10 a.m. because you didn't eat breakfast? That seems like a good cause, a good why you could be hungry. Maybe you had something even more creative. So, scholars, we looked at the vocabulary words already, and you hopefully listened to my reading or read with someone, pages 68 to 81. It leaves you some reading there on your own to do as well. I'd like you to read it to someone if possible, but I want you to also look with me at another part of your packet. So on this side, right, I jotted down a little reminder for myself. The cause is why something happened, and the effect is what happened because of it. So it says pick one event from these chapters. What are two things that happened because of this event? So scholars, if you're following along with me right now, we could actually work on this one together, or you could do another one, another event of your own. But let's think about that for a moment. So something that happened in these chapters that we read. How about Ruby arrived at the mall? So that's going to be our event. Now we're going to think of two things that happened because of that. So two effects. So what happened because Ruby came to the mall? Right? So what effects did that have? So what happened because of that? One thing that I was thinking of that happened, Ivan pouted when Julia paid attention to Ruby. Right? So scholars, think about that for a moment. If Ruby hadn't arrived, would Julia pay attention to Ruby? No, because Ruby wouldn't be there, and then Ivan wouldn't have pouted and been jealous about it. Right? Another one that I thought of about Ruby arriving at the mall. Right? Stella cut her foot on the ramp when getting Ruby from the truck. Scholars, I realized I was probably writing and talking a little fast. So if you're still working on the first one and working on the second one, that's okay. You can pause for a moment and catch up on that writing, or you can keep writing right now while I talk for a moment. But again, this is something that happened because of Ruby arriving. Right? If Ruby hadn't arrived, would Stella have been going up that ramp into that truck? No, that wouldn't have happened. So those two things are effects of Ruby being brought to the mall. Right? So they happened because of that. Right? The what happened. We'll work with this much more throughout the book and into other books we read as well. Cause and effect are really important in reading, and you'll even hear in our study of history this year that cause and effect is a really big part of history as well. So scholars, as you work, or as you continue, if you were listening to this video today and following along with me, I'd like you right here by number 4 to make a little smiley face, just to show me that you are following through and working like you were supposed to today on listening to my video and doing the lesson with me. Give yourself a little smiley face, some hair if you'd like, showing me that you were following along with today's lesson. All right, let's get you back to that slideshow for just a moment. And we'll close out with just a reminder that you have just a few pages to read on your own and finish both of those pages in your packet. And then remember, of course, photos of both of those pages, both sides of the work, and upload that to submit it in our Google Classroom. Thanks for joining me for another day, scholars. Tomorrow we have a little quiz on what we've read so far in The One and Only Ivan. So there's no packet work or reading to do tomorrow for it. Just you answering a few questions about the story. Thanks for joining me.